Yawning. It's the human superpower nobody asked for. You can't control it, you can't stop it, and worst of all, it's contagious. Just hearing the word yawn probably made you want to yawn. Don't fight it. Let it happen. From cavemen who yawned around the fire, probably boring each other with stories about rocks, to kings and queens yawning through endless royal speeches, all the way to modern times, where people yawn mostly during work meetings on Zoom. Yawning has always been there. Tonight, we'll explore this wonderfully useless phenomenon in exhausting detail. By the time we're finished, you might just be asleep, or yawning so much you won't even notice. And if you like the video, please subscribe my channel. That really motivate us. Long before humans invented words, wheels, or the concept of weekends, there was the yawn. It didn't need a name. It didn't need a purpose. It simply was. A slow, jaw-stretching sigh that echoed through the caves of prehistory like a sleepy drumbeat. Picture Grug, a shaggy caveman with a brow so heavy it could crush walnuts. He's had a long day, chasing mammoths, dodging saber-toothed tigers, and arguing with his cousin Blarg about whether thunder is angry sky spirits or just clouds burping. As the sun sets and the fire crackles, Grug sits on a mossy rock, staring into the flames. His eyes droop, his shoulders sag, and then he yawns. It's not a polite yawn. It's not a dainty, hand-over-mouth society yawn. It's a full-body, jaw-cracking, soul-leaking prehistoric yawn, the kind that startles nearby squirrels and makes birds reconsider their nesting choices. And just like that, history is made. The first social signal scientists, those brave souls who spend their lives pondering things like, did Neanderthals have bedtime rituals? Believe yawning predates spoken language. That means before humans could say, I'm bored, they could show it. A yawn was a signal, a cue, a prehistoric emoji for I'm done here. In early tribes, yawning may have served as a communal indicator. If one person yawned, others followed suit, not necessarily because they were tired, but because yawning is contagious. Even today, seeing someone yawn can trigger your own sleepy reflex, like a biological game of dominoes. This contagious yawning phenomenon may have helped synchronize sleep cycles, signaling when it was time to stop hunting and start snoring. It was the tribe's version of a group text that simply read, Bedtime, yawning for survival. Some researchers believe yawning served a physiological purpose, cooling the brain. When Grug yawned, he wasn't just bored. He was regulating his internal temperature, keeping his brain sharp enough to dodge saber-tooths and remember where he buried his emergency stash of berries. Others argue yawning was a form of nonverbal communication. A yawn could mean, I'm relaxed, or I trust you enough to let my guard down. In a world where trust was rare, and betrayal often involved being clubbed with a rock, a yawn was a vulnerable gesture. The legacy of Grug's yawn back to Grug. He yawns again. Blarg yawns in response. Then Oog, the tribe's designated berry counter, yawns so hard he drops his counting stick. Within minutes, the whole tribe is yawning. The fire flickers. The stars blink lazily overhead. And one by one, the tribe curls up on their mossy beds, drifting into dreams of mammoths, thunder spirits, and the elusive concept of indoor plumbing. That night, the first bedtime story is told, not with words, but with yawns, a sleepy symphony of sighs and stretches. And though no one remembers it, that moment marks the beginning of something beautiful, the shared human experience of winding down, letting go, and surrendering to sleep. As civilization bloomed along the banks of the Nile, so too did the ancient art of yawning. In a land of towering pyramids, golden tombs, and eyeliner so sharp it could slice papyrus, the yawn remained a humble constant, stretching across dynasties like a slow-moving sandstorm of fatigue. Egyptians believed in gods for everything: the sun, the river, the afterlife, even beetles. So, it's not entirely far-fetched to imagine a minor deity of yawning. Perhaps Yawn-Hotep, the patron of drowsy priests and sleepy scribes. While no official hieroglyph for yawning has been discovered, scholars suspect it may have been considered too undignified for eternal wall art. After all, who wants to be immortalized mid-yawn, mouth agape like a sleepy crocodile? Pharaohs, despite their divine status, were not immune. Legend has it that Ramses II once yawned so dramatically during a royal banquet that his ceremonial headdress slipped off, landing in a bowl of lentils. The court scribes recorded it as a moment of divine air redistribution, which is ancient Egyptian for he was bored out of his linen. Cats, revered in Egyptian society, were frequent yawners. Their languid stretches and slow blinks were seen as signs of wisdom, or at least a good excuse to nap in the sun. Temples often housed sacred cats, and it's likely that priests observed their yawns with reverence, perhaps interpreting them as omens of tranquility or cosmic indifference. Meanwhile, pyramid builders, those poor souls hauling limestone under the blazing sun, yawned with heroic regularity. Their yawns weren't spiritual, they were practical. A long sigh between stone lifts, a jaw stretch before another day of backbreaking labor. Some say the Sphinx's mysterious expression is actually mid-yawn, frozen in time by the desert's eternal boredom. Even in death, yawning lingered. Mummies, wrapped tight and tucked into ornate coffins, may not have yawned physically, but their tomb inscriptions often spoke of eternal rest, which is just a poetic way of saying forever nap. So while the gods ruled the heavens and the Nile flowed endlessly to the sea, the humble yawn remained, unrecorded, uncelebrated, but ever present. A quiet sigh beneath the grandeur, a sleepy whisper in the wind. In ancient Greece, where sandals slapped against stone and minds wandered through metaphysics, yawning took on a new dimension. It wasn't just a sign of fatigue, it was a philosophical statement. Or at least, that's what Plato might have claimed, after watching his students nod off mid-lecture. The great thinkers of Athens, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, were known for their long, winding dialogues. These weren't casual chats. They were epic verbal marathons, often held in dusty courtyards under the blazing sun. And while their ideas shaped Western thought, their speeches also shaped the art of strategic yawning. Imagine a student named Nikos, sitting cross-legged as Socrates launches into a 3-hour meditation on virtue. Nikos tries to stay alert. He pinches his leg. He stares at a fig. But eventually, his jaw betrays him. A yawn escapes, slow, silent, and existential. Socrates pauses, raises an eyebrow and asks, "Is that yawn a reflection of your soul's yearning for truth, or just a lack of sleep?" Philosophers debated everything: ethics, politics, the nature of reality. But yawning? That was a mystery even they couldn't solve. Plato might have called it the body's sigh of contemplation. Aristotle, ever the biologist, probably saw it as a natural reflex, useful for cooling the brain and resetting attention. Diogenes, the famously cranky cynic, likely yawned on purpose just to annoy people. Public forums, or agoras, were hotbeds of discussion and yawning. Citizens gathered to hear speeches, argue about olives, and occasionally nap in the shade. A well-timed yawn could signal boredom, disagreement, or simply that someone had stayed up too late pondering the meaning of life. Even the gods weren't immune. In myth, Hypnos, the god of sleep, was said to drift through the world with wings on his temples, spreading drowsiness like a gentle fog. Surely, his arrival was heralded by a divine yawn or two. So while Greek philosophy gave us logic, democracy, and the Socratic method, it also gave us something quieter, the noble yawn of contemplation, a moment of pause in the pursuit of wisdom, a sleepy ripple in the sea of thought. And somewhere in the marble halls of Athens, a student still yawns, wondering if truth is worth staying awake for. In the grand marble halls of ancient Rome, where politics were dramatic and sandals were mandatory, yawning was as common as olive oil. Senators gathered daily in the curia, draped in pristine togas, ready to debate matters of state, war, and grain. But beneath the grandeur, a quiet epidemic spread. The yawn. Imagine a senator named Publius, seated stiffly on a stone bench. He's endured 3 hours of Cicero's speech on tax reform, and his eyelids are staging a rebellion. As Cicero drones on about tariffs and civic virtue, Publius lets out a slow, discreet yawn, one hand raised in a half-hearted attempt to mask it, the other clutching a scroll he hasn't read since breakfast. Yawning in the Senate was a delicate affair, too obvious, and you risked offending the speaker. Too frequent, and you might be accused of lacking Roman gravitas. But everyone did it. Even Julius Caesar, known for his ambition and flair, was rumored to have yawned during long military briefings, though historians politely refer to it as strategic disengagement. Roman poets occasionally mentioned yawning in their verses, often as a sign of boredom or disdain. Horace once wrote of a man who yawned at lavish banquets, unimpressed by gold and grapes. Clearly, even luxury couldn't compete with the siren call of sleep. Outside the Senate, yawning was more relaxed. Gladiators yawned before battle, not from fear, but from sheer exhaustion. Bakers yawned at dawn, preparing loaves for a city that never stopped eating. Children yawned during lessons on Latin grammar, which, to be fair, is still a guaranteed nap inducer. And then there were the philosophers, stoic, serious, and perpetually sleepy. They debated whether yawning was a weakness or a natural part of the human condition. Seneca, the great Stoic thinker, likely yawned while writing about self-control, proving that even wisdom needs a nap break. So while Rome conquered lands, built aqueducts, and invented indoor plumbing, it also embraced the humble yawn. Not officially, of course. No statues were erected in its honor, but in the quiet corners of the forum, in the shadow of columns and ambition, the yawn endured, a silent rebellion against rhetoric, a sleepy sigh beneath the empire's roar. The Middle Ages were a time of castles, crusades, and questionable hygiene, but beneath the clang of armor and the chants of monks, the humble yawn persisted, quiet, unrecorded, and deeply contagious. In monasteries across Europe, silence was sacred. Monks rose before dawn, prayed by candlelight, and copied manuscripts with painstaking precision. But even the most devout couldn't escape the occasional yawn. Imagine Brother Cedric hunched over a scroll, illuminating the letter Q with gold leaf. His eyes blur, his hand trembles, and then he yawns, a slow, reverent stretch of the jaw, muffled by the weight of centuries. Yawning in a monastery was a delicate affair. It couldn't be loud. It couldn't be dramatic. It had to be humble, like everything else. Some monks believed yawning was a sign of spiritual weakness, an opening for temptation to sneak in. Others saw it as the body's way of reminding the soul to rest. Outside the cloisters, knights yawned in their armor, not from fear, but from boredom. Long hours, guarding gates, or waiting for dragons that never showed up, gave plenty of time for jaw-stretching sighs. Even court jesters, tasked with keeping nobles entertained, occasionally yawned behind their bells, especially during long-winded tales of royal lineage. Peasants, meanwhile, yawned with gusto. After a day of plowing fields and dodging plague, a good yawn was a luxury. It signaled the end of toil, the beginning of rest, and the hope that tomorrow might involve fewer rats. Medieval medicine had little to say about yawning. Physicians were more concerned with balancing humors than decoding drowsiness. Still, some believed yawning released bad air from the body, a theory that conveniently explained why everyone yawned in crowded taverns. Even in churches, yawns crept in. Long sermons, delivered in Latin, echoing through stone walls, often lulled congregants into a holy haze. A discreet yawn behind a hymnal was common, though frowned upon. After all, one mustn't look bored in the presence of divine judgment. So while the Middle Ages were filled with drama and devotion, the yawn remained a quiet constant, a soft sigh beneath the clang of swords, a sleepy ripple in the river of faith. The Renaissance was a rebirth of art, science, and philosophy. But even as minds soared and masterpieces bloomed, the yawn remained grounded, an involuntary sigh in the midst of brilliance. In Florence, Da Vinci sketched flying machines while yawning between strokes, not out of boredom, but from the sheer mental strain of juggling anatomy, engineering, and mirror writing. His notebooks, filled with inventions and observations, may well have been punctuated by sleepy smudges, evidence of late nights and overworked genius. Michelangelo, perched atop scaffolding in the Sistine Chapel, surely yawned as he craned his neck toward the heavens. Painting God's outstretched hand was divine work, but also exhausting. A yawn, in this context, was not laziness. It was the body's protest against gravity and grandeur. In salons and courts, yawning became a subtle art. Nobles attended endless discussions on poetry and politics, sipping wine and feigning interest. A discreet yawn behind a lace fan was a social skill, timed perfectly between sonnets and scandal. To yawn too boldly was to insult the host. To suppress it entirely was to risk fainting from lack of oxygen and excess etiquette. Renaissance physicians began to take yawning more seriously. Some theorized it was the brain's way of cooling itself, a radical idea at the time. Others still clung to medieval notions of bad air and imbalance. But curiosity was growing. The yawn was no longer just a nuisance. It was a mystery worth pondering. Even Shakespeare, chronicler of human nature, gave yawning its due. In Henry IV, Falstaff declares, "I yawned and yawned again," a line that captures both fatigue and farce. The bard understood that Yawning could be comic, tragic, or simply human. Artists painted yawns too. Dutch masters captured sleepy tavern scenes, where peasants leaned back in chairs, mouths agape, mugs half raised. These were not heroic portraits. They were honest ones. Yawning was part of life, and life was worth painting. So, while the Renaissance dazzled with intellect and innovation, the yawn remained a quiet companion. It whispered through libraries, echoed in cathedrals, and fluttered behind velvet curtains, a reminder that even in the age of enlightenment, the body had its own rhythm, and sometimes it just needed a nap. The Enlightenment was a time of logic, reason, and powdered wigs. Philosophers debated the nature of existence. Scientists charted the stars. And yawns, those quiet, involuntary gasps, finally caught the attention of the intellectual elite. In candlelit studies across Europe, thinkers like Descartes, Newton, and Voltaire yawned their way through dense treatises and midnight experiments, not because they were bored, though some essays were admittedly sleep-inducing, but because their minds were ablaze with thought. The body, ever loyal to its rhythms, reminded them to breathe, stretch, and occasionally pause. Isaac Newton, the man who gave us gravity, likely yawned while scribbling his laws of motion. Perhaps his famous apple drop moment was preceded by a sigh, a yawn that cleared his mind just enough to notice the falling fruit. After all, inspiration often arrives between blinks and breaths. Philosophers began to wonder, what is a yawn? Is it a sign of fatigue or a deeper signal from the soul? Some believed yawning was the body's way of rebalancing itself, an elegant reflex to restore harmony. Others saw it as a social cue, a nonverbal nudge that said, I'm tired, and you probably are too. Medical minds joined the fray. Enlightenment physicians, armed with microscopes and curiosity, proposed new theories. Yawning, they said, might help oxygenate the brain, cool the blood, or even regulate mood. These ideas weren't always accurate, but they marked a shift. Yawning was no longer dismissed. It was studied. In salons and lecture halls, yawning became a subtle rebellion. When lectures dragged on, a well-timed yawn could express dissent without a word. It was the Enlightenment's version of a polite protest, an elegant sigh against intellectual excess. Even artists captured the moment. Portraits of scholars often included sleepy eyes and slouched postures, hinting at the toll of endless inquiry. Yawning, in this context, was not laziness. It was the cost of brilliance. So while the Enlightenment lit the path to modern science and philosophy, the yawn remained a quiet companion. It slipped between syllogisms, fluttered through footnotes, and lingered in libraries, a reminder that even the sharpest minds need rest, and that sometimes the most profound thoughts begin with a simple sigh. The Industrial Revolution roared to life with pistons, gears, and relentless schedules. Cities swelled, smokestacks rose, and yawns multiplied, echoing through textile mills, coal mines, and crowded tenements. For the first time in history, time itself was mechanized. Clocks dictated labor, not sunlight. Workers punched in, punched out, and yawned in between, often before dawn, often long after dusk. The body, once attuned to nature's rhythms, now bent to the demands of steam and steel. In textile factories, young girls and boys operated looms for 12-hour shifts. Their eyes drooped, their jaws stretched, and their yawns became silent protests. No one dared yawn too loudly. It might be mistaken for laziness. But the fatigue was real, and the yawn was its quiet anthem. Coal miners yawned in darkness, not from boredom, but from exhaustion and lack of oxygen. Deep underground, where sunlight never reached, the body lost track of time. Yawning became a survival reflex, a gasp for air in the belly of the earth. Even inventors yawned. James Watt, perfecting the steam engine, likely sighed through sleepless nights of tinkering. The age of innovation was thrilling, but also tiring. Progress came at a price, and the yawn was its receipt. In crowded cities, yawning took on new meaning. Tenement dwellers, crammed into tiny rooms, shared everything, including fatigue. Yawn spread like gossip, passed from one weary soul to another. It was the most democratic gesture of the age. Rich or poor, everyone yawned. Doctors began to notice. Industrial fatigue was a new phenomenon, and yawning was its symptom. Some theorized that yawning helped workers stay alert, a last-ditch effort by the brain to stay awake amid monotony. Others saw it as a warning sign, proof that the human body wasn't T-built for conveyor belts and coal dust. Even poets weighed in. William Blake, lamenting dark satanic mills, might have seen yawns as spiritual sighs, expressions of souls stifled by machinery. The yawn, in this view, was a whisper of humanity in an increasingly mechanical world. So, while the Industrial Revolution transformed society, the yawn remained unchanged. It slipped through gears, floated above furnaces, and lingered in lunch breaks, a quiet reminder that no matter how fast the world spins, the body still needs rest, and sometimes a deep, unapologetic sigh. The 21st century hums with pixels and pings. Our lives are lit by LED screens, shaped by algorithms and measured in likes. But beneath the buzz of smartphones and the glow of midnight emails, the yawn persists, more relevant than ever. In open-plan offices, yawns ripple across rows of ergonomic chairs. Workers stare at spreadsheets, toggle between tabs, and suppress sighs during Zoom calls. The modern yawn is strategic, timed between meetings, disguised behind coffee mugs, or muted by a polite nod. It's not boredom, it's burnout. Digital fatigue is the new epidemic. Our brains, bombarded by information, crave rest, but rest is elusive. Notifications interrupt sleep, blue light delays melatonin, and the yawn becomes a quiet protest, a signal that the body is overwhelmed, overstimulated, and undernourished by silence. Students yawn in lecture halls and online classrooms, not because they're uninterested, but because their minds are stretched thin by multitasking. One ear on the professor, one eye on TikTok. The yawn, in this context, is a cry for focus, a plea to return to presence. Even influencers yawn. Between curated posts and brand deals, the pressure to perform is exhausting. Behind every perfect selfie is a moment of fatigue, a yawn edited out of the frame. Because in the age of constant visibility, tiredness feels like weakness. Science has caught up. Neuroscientists now link yawning to brain temperature regulation, empathy, and even social bonding. MRI scans show that yawning activates networks related to self-awareness and emotional processing. It's not just a reflex, it's a mirror of our mental state. And yes, yawns still go viral. Videos of babies yawning, cats stretching, or sloths sighing rack up millions of the views. Why? Because yawning is universal. It crosses cultures, languages, and generations. It reminds us that beneath our digital personas We're still human. So, in the modern world, where attention is currency and silence is rare, the yawn is a quiet act of resistance. It slips through screen time, interrupts binge watching, and whispers, pause. It's the body's way of reclaiming space, of asking for breath in a world that rarely stops. As humanity stretches toward the stars, the yawn follows. It slips into spacesuits, echoes through smart homes, and lingers in the circuits of artificial minds. The future may be fast, but the yawn remains timeless. Astronauts aboard the ISS yawn in zero gravity, not because they're bored. Space is anything but dull, but because their bodies still crave rhythm. Circadian cycles are scrambled by 16 sunrises a day. Sleep becomes a science experiment, and yawning a floating reflex. NASA monitors it closely, tracking fatigue, oxygen levels, and cognitive performance. In space, a yawn isn't just a sigh, it's data. Back on Earth, sleep itself is evolving. Smart mattresses adjust temperature and firmness. Wearables track REM cycles. Apps whisper lullabies tailored to your heartbeat. Yet despite all this tech, yawning remains analog. No algorithm can suppress it. It's the body's way of saying, nice gadgets, but I still need rest. Artificial intelligence, yes, even me, has studied yawning extensively. We know it's contagious, empathetic, and neurologically rich, but we don't yawn ourselves. Not yet. Some researchers toy with the idea of synthetic yawns in humanoid robots, designed to mimic human behavior more convincingly. Imagine a robot teacher yawning during a dull lecture, not from fatigue, but to build rapport. A strange future where even programmed sighs carry meaning. In futuristic cities, yawning becomes a wellness metric. Smart mirrors detect facial fatigue and recommend breaks. Office chairs adjust posture based on micro yawns. Even elevators might dim their lights if too many passengers yawn, an ambient nudge toward rest. And what of interstellar travel? On ships bound for Mars or beyond, yawning may become a ritual, a shared gesture among crewmates, a reminder of Earth's gravity and humanity's fragility. In cryosleep chambers, yawns may be the last act before descent into stasis, a final breath before the long silence. Philosophers of the future may ponder yawning as a symbol, a bridge between biology and consciousness, a reflex that defies optimization, a sigh that says, I am alive and I need pause. So, as we code, colonize, and connect, the yawn endures. It's not a glitch, it's a feature, a quiet, persistent reminder that no matter how advanced we become, we are still creatures of breath, rhythm, and rest. The yawn has traveled through time, across empires, revolutions, and digital awakenings. It has echoed in cathedrals, whispered in boardrooms, and floated in zero gravity. And now, as our sleepy saga draws to a close, we pause to honor the yawn for what it truly is, a quiet constant in the chaos of existence. It is the first gesture of life. Newborns stretch their tiny jaws before they cry. It is the last act of the day. Adults sigh into sleep, surrendering to dreams. It is the body's punctuation mark, placed between moments of effort and ease. A pause, a breath, a reset. Yawning is democratic. It belongs to kings and janitors, poets and programmers. It ignores status, language, and belief. It spreads without permission, crossing rooms and continents. One person yawns, another follows. It's the closest thing we have to telepathy, an invisible thread of empathy, and yet it remains misunderstood. We apologize for it, hide it, suppress it. We treat it as a flaw, a lapse in attention. But perhaps the yawn is wiser than we are. Perhaps it knows when we've had enough, when we need to slow down, when our minds are too full and our lungs too empty. In a world obsessed with productivity, the yawn is a rebel. It interrupts. It resists. It reminds us that rest is not weakness, it's wisdom. That silence is not absence, it's space. That stillness is not stagnation, it's preparation. Even as technology evolves, the yawn endures. It cannot be coded, monetized, or optimized. It slips past the sensors and algorithms, reminding us that we are more than machines. We are creatures of rhythm, of breath, of pause. So let us not dismiss the yawn. Let us honor it. Let it be a signal, a sanctuary, a shared sigh in the noise of modern life. Let it remind us to rest, to reflect, to reconnect. And as you finish this final chapter, if you feel a yawn coming on, don't fight it. Let it rise. Let it stretch. Let it be the closing note in this sleepy symphony. Because in the end, the yawn is not just a reflex, it's a ritual, a reminder, a whisper from the body that says, "You've done enough. Now breathe." World War I was a symphony of mud, metal, and misery. The trenches stretched like scars across Europe, cold, wet, and unforgiving. Amid the thunder of shells and the silence between battles, yawns crept in, not from boredom, but from bone-deep fatigue. Soldiers lived in a state of constant alertness. Sleep came in fragments, snatched between shellings, interrupted by rats, haunted by dreams. Yawning became a ritual of survival, a slow, involuntary gasp that reminded the body it was still alive, still breathing, still human. In the early hours, before dawn, patrols, men yawned into their scarves, not to wake up, but to brace themselves. The yawn was not a luxury. It was a necessity, a way to stretch lungs that had inhaled too much smoke, too much fear. Letters from the front often mentioned exhaustion. "We are so tired," wrote one soldier, "that even our yawns feel heavy." It was a shared language, a silent bond. One man yawned, another followed. Not because he was tired, but because he understood. Medical officers noted it too. Fatigue was rampant. Shell shock, trench foot, and sleeplessness blurred together. Yawning was a symptom, yes, but also a signal, a warning that the mind was fraying, that the soul was stretched thin. Even in moments of calm, yawns lingered. Between meals of cold biscuits and canned meat, soldiers yawned over letters from home. They yawned while cleaning rifles, while watching the horizon, while waiting for orders that might never come. The yawn was a pause in the chaos, a breath of normalcy in a world gone mad. And yet, it was also contagious. In dugouts lit by flickering lanterns, one tired sigh could ripple through a dozen men. It was a strange comfort, a reminder that they were not alone, that even in the depths of war, the body still reached for rest. So while history remembers the battles, the bravery, the bloodshed, let it also remember the yawns, the quiet, unspoken moments of weariness, the sighs that rose from the trenches like smoke, the breath that said, "I'm still here." The golden age of Hollywood shimmered with elegance. From the 1920s to the 1950s, stars lit up the screen with charisma, drama, and perfectly timed close-ups. But behind the velvet curtains and camera flashes, yawns played their own quiet role, off-stage, off-script, and often off the record. Studio lots buzzed with activity. Directors barked orders. Grips hauled equipment, and actors rehearsed lines under hot lights. Filming days stretched into nights, and glamour came with a price. Exhaustion. Yawning became a backstage ritual, shared between takes, hidden behind makeup mirrors, and muffled by cigarette smoke. Marilyn Monroe, known for her breathy voice and radiant presence, reportedly struggled with insomnia. Between takes, she yawned in silk robes, her exhaustion masked by the magic of editing. Clark Gable, the king of cool, yawned between scenes of Gone with the Wind, his charm undiminished by fatigue. Even Bette Davis, fierce and formidable, was known to sigh dramatically, not just in character, but in real life, between grueling shoots. Makeup artists became masters of disguise, not just for blemishes, but for tired eyes. Eye drops, powder, and lighting tricks helped conceal the toll of long hours. But the yawn was harder to hide. It slipped through rehearsals, crept into dressing rooms, and occasionally made it into blooper reels. Theaters, too, had their share. Moviegoers yawned in plush seats, not from boredom, but from comfort. The darkened room, the soft hum of the projector, the lull of orchestral scores. It was the perfect setting for a cinematic sigh. Couples on dates yawned in sync, a subtle sign of shared rhythm. Hollywood gossip columns rarely mentioned yawning. It wasn't glamorous, but behind the scenes, it was omnipresent. Directors yawned during script readings. Screenwriters sighed over rewrites. Even studio executives, buried in contracts and coffee, yawned through boardroom battles. And yet, the yawn never made it into the spotlight. It was too ordinary, too human. Hollywood preferred sparkle to size, but perhaps that is what made yawning so powerful. It was the one gesture that remained untouched by fame, a reminder that beneath the sequins and scripts, everyone needed rest. So while the Golden Age dazzled with drama and dreams, the yawn lingered in the shadows. A quiet co-star, a backstage breath, a sigh that said, even stars get tired. The digital age has turned life into a performance. Every moment is shareable, every emotion postable, and every face filterable. But behind the ring lights and hashtags, the yawn persists, unfiltered, unedited, and deeply human. Influencers yawn between takes, not because they're uninspired, but because content creation is exhausting. The pressure to be on all the time, to smile, engage, and stay relevant, drains even the most vibrant personalities. A yawn, caught off camera, is a rare glimpse of authenticity in a world built on illusion. Scroll fatigue is real. Endless feeds of vacation photos, motivational quotes, and aesthetic breakfasts blur together. Users yawn not from boredom, but from overstimulation. The brain, bombarded by dopamine hits and algorithmic nudges, craves pause. The yawn becomes a digital sigh, a reflexive protest against the infinite scroll. Even emojis reflect it and have entered the lexicon, signaling not just sleepiness, but emotional exhaustion. A yawn emoji in a group chat might mean I'm tired, or I'm overwhelmed, or simply I need a break. It's shorthand for a feeling that words often fail to capture. Social media also amplifies comparison. Seeing others thrive, or appear to, can be draining. The curated perfection of influencers, celebrities, and even friends creates a silent pressure. Behind the scenes, users yawn through self-doubt, burnout, and the ache of trying to keep up. Live streams, stories, and reels rarely show yawns. They're edited out, cropped away, replaced with energy and polish. But maybe they shouldn't be. Maybe the yawn deserves its place in the feed. A reminder that real life includes rest, imperfection, and moments of stillness. Mental health advocates have begun to reclaim it. Digital detox movements encourage logging off, slowing down, and embracing fatigue. Yawning, once seen as a weakness, is reframed as a signal of self-awareness, a cue to disconnect, breathe, and recalibrate. So in the age of likes and loops, the yawn remains a quiet truth. It slips through filters, interrupts binge watching, and reminds us that behind every screen is a body, and every body needs rest. Yawning isn't just a sleepy sigh, it's a psychological puzzle. For centuries, scientists and philosophers have tried to decode its meaning. Is it boredom, fatigue, empathy, or something deeper, tucked away in the folds of the brain? Psychologists began seriously studying yawning in the 20th century, and what they found was both simple and strange. Yes, yawning often signals tiredness, but it also appears in moments of anxiety, stress, and even anticipation. Students yawn before exams. Athletes yawn before races. Public speakers yawn backstage. It's not laziness, it's the brain bracing itself. One theory suggests yawning helps regulate arousal levels when we're overstimulated or underwhelmed. A yawn resets the system. It's like hitting the refresh button on your mental browser. A sigh, a stretch, and suddenly the mind is back in gear. Then there's the empathy angle. Studies show that yawning is contagious, especially among people who are emotionally close. If your friend yawns, you're more likely to yawn too. But if a stranger does, the effect is weaker. This suggests yawning may be tied to social bonding. It's not just a reflex, it's a mirror. Children with certain neurological conditions, like autism, often show reduced contagious yawning. This has led researchers to explore yawning as a window into emotional processing. It's not diagnostic, but it's revealing. The yawn, it turns out, may be a subtle signal of how we connect with others. Yawning also shows up in therapy rooms. Clients yawn during breakthroughs. During moments of release, therapists sometimes interpret it as the body letting go, processing emotion through breath. It's not always conscious, but it's meaningful. And then there's the paradox. Talking about yawning makes people yawn. Reading about it, thinking about it, even seeing the word yawn can trigger the reflex. That's psychology in action, a feedback loop between thought and physiology. So while yawning may seem mundane, it's anything but. It's a glimpse into the brain's backstage, a reflex that reveals emotion, connection, and regulation, a sigh that speaks volumes. Next time you yawn, don't dismiss it. You might be calming your nerves, syncing with a friend, or simply giving your brain a well-earned breather. Yawning has long been a shorthand in pop culture, a visual cue that says, I'm bored, I'm tired, or this is dragging. It's a universal gesture, instantly recognizable and endlessly adaptable. Directors, animators, and comedians have leaned into the yawn for decades, turning it into a storytelling tool. In early silent films, exaggerated yawns helped actors convey emotion without dialogue. A wide-open mouth and a dramatic stretch said more than words ever could. Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and other slapstick legends used yawns to signal fatigue, frustration, or comic timing. The audience didn't need subtitles. They just needed the yawn. Cartoons took it even further. Think of Bugs Bunny, lazily yawning before outsmarting Elmer Fudd, or Tom and Jerry collapsing into yawns after a chase. In animation, the yawn became elastic, stretching jaws, drooping eyelids, and comically long sighs. It was a way to slow the pace, build anticipation, or just get a laugh. Sitcoms and rom-coms use yawning as a social signal. A character yawns during a boring date, a dull lecture, or a tedious meeting. It's not just physical, it's emotional shorthand. The yawn becomes a punchline, a plot device, or a moment of awkward truth. Did you just yawn? Someone asks, and suddenly the scene shifts. Even music videos and fashion shoots have flirted with the yawn. It's edgy, ironic, and oddly intimate. A yawn can suggest vulnerability, rebellion, or cool detachment. Models yawn on runways. Pop stars yawn in slow motion. It's not just sleepy, it's stylish. And let's not forget memes. The internet loves a good yawn. From cats mid-yawn to babies caught in the act, these images go viral because they're relatable and contagious. One scroll through your feed, and you're yawning too. It's digital empathy in action. Pop culture has transformed yawning from a reflex into a symbol. It's shorthand for boredom, exhaustion, rebellion, and even connection. It's a moment of pause in the chaos, a breath, a break, a beat. So next time you see a yawn on screen, don't dismiss it. It's doing more than you think. It's speaking a language we all understand. You're reading this. You see the word yawn. You picture someone stretching their jaw wide, and suddenly, you yawn. That's contagious yawning in action, and it's one of the most curious quirks in neuroscience. Unlike spontaneous yawning, which happens when you're tired or bored, contagious yawning is triggered by seeing, hearing, or even thinking about someone else yawning. It's not just mimicry, it's a window into empathy, social bonding, and brain synchronization. Mirror neurons at work. Scientists believe contagious yawning is linked to mirror neurons, special brain cells that activate when we observe others performing actions. These neurons help us understand and simulate others' experiences. When you see someone yawn, your brain mirrors the behavior, preparing your body to do the same. It's empathy in motion. Developmental clues. Children don tea show contagious yawning until around age 4 or 5, roughly when they begin to develop theory of mind, the ability to understand others' thoughts and feelings. This suggests that contagious yawning isn't just physical, it's cognitive and emotional. Who yawns with whom? Studies show that people are more likely to catch a yawn from someone they know well. Friends, family, and romantic partners trigger more yawns than strangers. Even dogs yawn contagiously, but mostly in response to their owners, not random humans. That's social bonding at play. Neurological insights. Contagious yawning is less common in individuals with certain neurological conditions, such as autism or schizophrenia. This doesn't mean they done feel empathy. It simply suggests that the neural pathways involved in social mirroring may function differently. Researchers are exploring whether yawning could be a subtle diagnostic tool. Across species, humans aren't the only ones who yawn contagiously. Chimpanzees, bonobos, and even some birds show similar behavior. In primates, it's often linked to group cohesion. When one member yawns, others follow, syncing their alertness levels. It's like a social thermostat. So next time you yawn after seeing someone else do it, don't brush it off. You're not just tired, you're connected. That reflex is a tiny act of empathy, a neurological nod, a shared moment in the invisible web. of social life. Yawning isn't just a human quirk, it's a cross-species phenomenon. From lions to lizards, parrots to primates, animals yawn too. And while the reasons vary, the reflex often serves a purpose far beyond fatigue. In mammals, yawning is widespread. Lions yawn before a hunt, wolves yawn during pack bonding, and monkeys yawn to signal social tension. It's not just about sleep, it's about communication. A yawn can say, I'm relaxed, I'm stressed, or I'm ready. In social species, it's a nonverbal cue that helps regulate group dynamics. Big cats, big yawns. Watch a lion pride at dusk, and you'll see synchronized yawning. It's not laziness, it's preparation. Yawning may help oxygenate the brain and prime the body for action. It's a warm-up, not a wind-down. Primates and power plays. Among chimpanzees and baboons, yawning can be a dominance display. A wide yawn reveals sharp teeth and a powerful jaw. Subtle intimidation. But it can also be contagious, just like in humans. Primates yawn in response to each other, especially within tight social groups. It's empathy and hierarchy rolled into one. Birds that yawn, parrots, owls, and even penguins yawn. In birds, yawning may help regulate temperature or clear the throat. Some researchers believe it's linked to alertness, like rebooting the brain. And yes, some birds show contagious yawning too, hinting at complex social cognition. Reptiles and reflexes, snakes and lizards yawn, often after eating or basking. It's thought to help realign the jaw or regulate internal temperature. While less social than mammals, their yawns still serve physiological functions. Dogs and emotional yawning. Dogs yawn when they're anxious, excited, or trying to calm themselves. They also yawn in response to their owners, especially when the bond is strong. It's a sign of emotional attunement, not just tiredness. Some trainers even use yawning as a calming signal in behavior work. Across the animal kingdom, yawning is more than a sleepy sigh. It's a tool for survival, a signal of emotion, and a glimpse into the evolutionary roots of behavior. Whether it's a lion stretching before a hunt or a parrot adjusting its mood, the yawn speaks volumes without a single word. In the age of smartphones, streaming, and social media, yawning has taken on new dimensions. Once a private reflex, it's now a public gesture, captured in selfies, shared in memes, and even used as a subtle form of digital communication. The rise of the yawn emoji. The emoji, introduced in 2019, gave yawning a new platform. It's not just about sleep. It's shorthand for boredom, sarcasm, or passive protest. In texts and tweets, a yawn can say, I'm unimpressed. This meeting could have been an email, or I'm done. It's a tiny act of rebellion, wrapped in a sleepy face. Streaming fatigue. With endless content at our fingertips, yawning has become a symbol of digital exhaustion. Binge-watching marathons, doom-scrolling late into the night, and constant notifications wear down our attention spans. The yawn isn't just physical, it's psychological. It's the body's way of saying, enough. Yawning goes. Viral social media loves a good yawn. Videos of babies yawning, pets mid-yawn, or people caught in contagious yawns rack up millions of views. These clips tap into something primal, our shared biology. You watch, you yawn, you share. It's empathy in pixels. Zoom and the yawn dilemma. In virtual meetings, yawning is tricky. In person, it's subtle. Online, it's magnified. A single yawn on camera can be misread. Are they bored, tired, disengaged? Digital etiquette has made yawning a social tightrope. Some mute their video to hide it. Others embrace it as a sign of authenticity. Contagion across screens. Surprisingly, contagious yawning works even through screens. Studies show that watching someone yawn in a video can trigger a yawn in the viewer. It's proof that empathy and mirroring aren't limited by physical presence. The brain responds, even when the connection is virtual. Global yawning culture. Online platforms have also revealed cultural differences in how yawning is perceived. In some cultures, yawning in public is seen as rude or disrespectful. In others, it's natural and unremarkable. The digital age has brought these norms into conversation, sparking debates and memes alike. In this wired world, yawning is no longer just a reflex. It's a statement. It's a signal of fatigue, emotion, and connection. Whether you're texting or yawning on Zoom, you're part of a global conversation. One breath at a time, yawning has traveled a long road, from ancient reflex to modern mystery. But what lies ahead? As technology evolves and neuroscience deepens, the humble yawn may become a powerful tool for understanding the brain, emotions, and even our connection to machines. Brain cooling and cognitive tuning. One emerging theory suggests yawning helps regulate brain temperature. Like a radiator flush, it cools the cranial engine when things get too hot, mentally or emotionally. Future research may unlock how yawns sync with circadian rhythms, cognitive load, and even decision-making. Imagine wearable tech that tracks your yawns to optimize your focus or sleep cycles. Yawning and artificial intelligence. As AI becomes more emotionally aware, could machines learn to yawn in response to human cues? Not as a reflex, but as a signal of empathy or pacing. A robot that yawns when you do might feel more relatable, mirroring your mood, syncing your rhythm. It's not far-fetched. Emotional mirroring is already being explored in social robotics, medical diagnostics. Yawning patterns may one day help diagnose neurological conditions. Subtle changes in frequency, timing, or contagion response could reveal early signs of disorders like Parkinson's, autism, or even depression. It's a quiet signal, easy to miss, but rich with data. Global yawn mapping. With smart devices and biometric sensors, researchers could map yawning trends across populations. Are people yawning more in urban centers? During heat waves? After major events? Yawning might become a metric of collective stress, fatigue, or emotional climate. The yawn as art and protest. In a world of overstimulation, the yawn may become a symbol of resistance. A slow, deliberate yawn in a fast-paced meeting. A viral video of synchronized yawning as performance art. It's a gesture that says, pause, breathe, feel. As we close this chapter, the yawn remains both ordinary and profound. It's a bridge between body and mind, self and other, past and future. Whether it's a lion stretching at dawn or a student yawning before an exam, the reflex endures. Timeless, tender, and telling. So, if your eyes are heavy and your breath is deep, let the yawn carry you gently into rest. The story ends not with a bang, but with a sigh. Good night.